Hello, all you Brontë-saurs and Eyre-Heads. Coming up on episode 22 of Sundays with Jane Eyre, Moor House. We'll be reading volume 3, chapters 3 and 4, or chapters 29 and 30 of the novel. And our co-host will be author Rowan Coleman, who writes the Brontë Sisters Mystery series under the name Bella Ellis. Our story so far in 3 minutes. Young Jane has survived an abusive childhood at the hands of the Reed family and the Lowood school where she was sent for being too rebellious. Her best friend at school, the saintly Helen Burns, dies at a very young age. When she turns 18, Jane is hired to be a governess at Thornfield to educate Mr. Rochester's ward Adele. Jane is disappointed Thornfield is not haunted, but she does hear a strange laugh coming from the attic. The housekeeper, Mrs. Fairfax, assures her that it is just the servant Grace Poole. Jane meets Mr. Rochester. He falls off his horse. He is fascinated by her watercolor paintings, and they begin to have intimate conversations about their inner lives. One night, a mysterious fire breaks out in his bedroom. Jane rescues Rochester by dousing the fire and him with water. Then they hold hands in the bedroom. The next day, Jane thinks Grace Poole tried to murder him. Friends of Rochester come to Thornfield for an extended holiday, including Blanche Ingram, whom everyone believes is going to marry Rochester. As Jane continues her inner battle over her love for Rochester, she watches him interact with the insufferable Blanche. The mysterious Mr. Mason arrives from the West Indies, and an old Romany woman arrives to tell the ladies fortunes. Jane hears her fortune, but it turns out that it was Rochester in disguise as the fortune teller all along. During the night, Jane is awakened by someone in the attic calling for help. Rochester brings Jane to the attic, and there she finds Mason, wounded and bloody, in his bed. Jane assumes that Grace Poole has tried to murder him. Jane is summoned back to her childhood home, Gateshead, by her dying Aunt Reed, and learns that her aunt had withheld from Jane a letter from an uncle wishing to make her the heir to his fortune, but Mrs. Reed told him that Jane was dead. Jane returns to Thornfield, and she and Rochester finally reveal their love for each other. In the orchard at night, Jane utters the famous line, "I am no bird and no net ensnares me," and there is kissing. Rochester proposes to Jane, or Jane proposes to Rochester. In any case, they agree to marry. Rochester then takes Jane shopping in what would be the worst rom-com shopping montage ever. A couple nights before the wedding, Jane has a nightmare and wakes to find a strange and scary woman in her bedroom who tears her wedding veil in half. Rochester tells her not to worry, but to be on the safe side, sleep in someone else's bed the night before the wedding. The wedding happens, but when the clergyman asks if anyone knows of any impediments of the union, a lawyer, along with Mr. Mason, stop the ceremony with news that Rochester is already married to Mason's sister Bertha. Rochester admits it and reveals that he has been keeping his mad wife locked up on the third floor of Thornfield with Grace Poole as her keeper. He takes them all to the room, wrestles with his wife Bertha, and dares them all to judge him for secretly keeping his mad wife locked up in a windowless room in the attic. Rochester finally tells Jane the story of his loveless marriage to Bertha and her madness. Then he offers Jane to run away with him and be his mistress. Jane declines and secretly flees Thornfield. She wanders the moors and finally collapses of exhaustion at the door of the Rivers family, who take her in. In Volume 3, Chapters 3 and 4, Jane spends a month at Moor House, the Rivers family home, and gets to know Diana, Mary, and their intense parson brother, St. John Rivers. Yes, it's time for Team St. John, everyone. No one's on Team St. John. You don't want to miss the next exciting episode of Sundays with Jane Eyre from the Rosenbach.